5 o'clock with a question that most of you will immediately know the answer to. Where were you 20 years ago tomorrow?
We are coming up on 2 decades since the 9/11 attacks, a day we'll never forget. And that's especially true for 2 Oregonians who were working in New York at the time. KGW's Pat Doris has our story.
20 years ago, I was right here in our spare bedroom getting ready for an early morning walk at about 5:45. And then I got a page from the assignment desk at the TV station saying there'd been a terror attack and that it was big. I turned on my TV and I couldn't believe what I saw. 2,900 miles away, just across the Hudson River from the World Trade Centers, Corvallis native Laura Steiler woke up late at a friend's apartment. She lived a life of bright lights and glamour as a model, very much in demand around the world.
You have to be pretty good and well known to have enough designers who want to hire you for the shows in every city. So I did New York, London, Milan, Paris, and even Tokyo and even Sydney.
She was in New York for a major event called Fashion Week, and her alarm failed to go off.
What woke me up was the plane crashing into the North Tower. The sound, it woke me up, but it's a sound I'd never heard before. I was like, did a dumpster fall on concrete? Like, what was that?
Across the Hudson River, Beaverton native Jason Baston was already on the way to his advertising sales job at the Discovery Channel. He lived on the same side of the river as Laura was staying. He remembers 9/11 like it was yesterday.
The day started out, it was a beautiful day, a little warm, but very sunny.
The train dropped him off in the basement of the World Trade Towers. He had to go up to the main mall to catch another train to his office.
While I did that, that's when I first recognized a very large sound. Sounded like kind of broken glass, but a deep bass sort of sound. And, living in New York at this point, you hear things that, don't always make sense, but you kind of become a New Yorker and you get along with your business. And that's kind of what I did.
He heard a plane had hit the Trade Center, but assumed it was a small one and an accident. Back in Jersey City, model Laura Steiler thought her fashion show was probably still on, but worried the city would lock down and that she'd be late.
I'm like putting my clothes on and I'm like jumping one-legged, into my jeans, and I've got a toothbrush in my mouth and I'm watching the news and I'm looking at my phone, and then all of a sudden the second plane hits live on TV. But because I was in Jersey City, the TV, because the radio tower was on top of that tower, the TV and my phone went off.
Jason Basden had left his office and hurried downtown to find his roommate working at Madison Square Garden so they could get out of there together. He could see smoke coming from the side of one of the buildings. These are pictures the roommate, Jeff Gamble, took at the time.
And as I'm still walking south, I'm trying to get down to 34th Street to get over to the Madison Square Garden. And I heard a very loud, basically only female voice, a cry, a collective cry of female voices. It's almost as if it was like all of the men's voices were drowned out by this female voice cry. And I looked downtown, and at this point, all I saw was a massive plume of smoke. And it literally looked like downtown Manhattan had just blown up. And so I saw the smoke, and at this point I started to run.
He discovered Jeff had already left. He raced to a train platform and got on board for the strange trip back across the river.
The train went really slow on the trip, but it didn't stop at any of the stations. And each platform had a number of people, and people were yelling at the train. I remember people trying to grab the train, trying to stop the train with their hands. And that was a bit frightening, because you wanted to, you naturally wanted to help them, because there was plenty of space on the train.
There was a woman crying with 2 children behind me. I remember she said that her husband was in the towers and she couldn't get a hold of him. I don't know what happened.
Back in Jersey City, Laura walked the short distance to the river's edge and watched in horror with many others as the buildings burned.
We were terrified that the building would fall. And I was on the phone with my mother, and I knew that there were news crews and firemen and police officers and people just standing at the base watching. And it was excruciatingly painful to not be able to warn them. Yeah. It's not something you forget. I mean, at that time, there were people hanging out of the buildings where the building smoke was. And we realized that they were jumping. And we were just sobbing, you know.
Jason eventually ended up standing about 500 yards away from Laura on the same riverfront. They've still never met, but both witnessed the awful events that were so hard to believe. In the aftermath, it made each reflect on their lives. The magazine covers and the glamour suddenly meant little to Laura.
It kind of like, what am I doing with my life? Is it meaningful? Does it have purpose? And at that time, no. I mean, fashion is very glamorous, but I'm not saving lives here.
She now lives in Austin, Texas, is an author, and practices energy medicine. Jason realized he wanted more as well.
On occasion, I'd come home for work, and I would think, like, what am I doing for society? And I was thinking, and this is no disrespect to anybody in sales. Everybody has to make a living, but I felt, you know, both my parents were educators, and I felt, you know, there was an opportunity.
He got into coaching and teaching and is now an athletic director in New Hampshire, where he feels he and his school are impacting the lives of thousands. Two of many changed forever by September 11th, 2001. Pat Doris, KGW News.
Those stories never get easier to hear or to think about. Let's turn now to the latest on Oregon's vaccination effort. Now, the goal is to get 80% of adults in the state vaccinated. Washington County has become the first now to hit that milestone. Devin Haskins shows us how they did it.
Washington County, the second most populated county in the state, and the first to reach the 80% vaccination milestone. There were just over 479,000 adults in the county eligible to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and a little more than 80% of them have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Early on, Washington County, in the COVID-19 response, developed and implemented an equity lens in our efforts. And so when vaccination came on board, Washington County partnered with diverse community organizations and health centers to co-create our vaccination communications programs and strategies.
Helping get there, multiple vaccine clinics. The county has continued to deploy their mobile vaccine team to various communities, and a mass vaccination site at the Hillsborough Stadium was open for months.
I think what's been most important for our vaccination outreach and events is that they really have been co-created with our communities and designed to answer questions.
And on the complete other end of the spectrum,
we have promoted it in social media, we've promoted it in the papers, we've offered prizes to come in and get vaccinations. We've tried everything we can to encourage people to get vaccinated.
Lake County in Southern Oregon is the least vaccinated county, with just over 40% of adults getting the first dose. The remote county has only roughly 7,000 people.
A lot of people are fairly isolated. They may work on a ranch. They may work outside a lot.
As more and more adults get vaccinated, more and more counties will join that list. Hood River should reach the 80% mark within the next week. Multnomah County should reach that mark within the next couple weeks. I'm Devin Haskins, KGW News.
Starting Monday, everyone in Washington state will need to wear a mask at large outdoor events. This comes after 5 outdoor events in Washington turned into super spreaders, and officials, of course, don't want to see that happen again. Governor Jay Inslee's order applies to crowds of 500 people or more, and it applies to everyone, vaccinated or not. Same goes for the indoor mask mandate that went into effect last month.
A wildfire burning in southern Oregon is now growing at an alarming rate, and some Portland firefighters are on their way to help. The Cougar Peak fire near Lakeview has burned 83,000 acres. That's 4 times bigger than it was yesterday, and on Wednesday, it had only burned 2,000 acres. The Lake County Sheriff's Office has increased evacuation levels as a result. Some areas are now in level 3, meaning people have to leave their homes. Oregon State Police also suspect the fire was human caused. They have set up a tip line for anyone who may have information.